The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, From Prospects to Customers, Getting More Value from Your Marketing Automation Technology. We appreciate everyone joining us today. Before we start the program, I'll just go over a few quick housekeeping items. I know there's going to be a lot of questions about the content, and we are leaving time at the end of the presentation for a Q&A session. You can go ahead and send in your questions as they come up for you throughout the presentation, and we'll put them into the queue to be answered at the end. To send a question, simply click on the Questions tab on your control panel, type your question into the top box, and then click on the Send button. That question will come to me, and like I said, I'll put it into the queue to be answered at the end. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, please use that same question feature to get my attention, and I'll do my best to resolve the problem for you. We will be providing you with a recording of the webinar and a copy of the PowerPoint slides. Those will probably go out tomorrow morning, so just keep an eye on your inbox for those materials. You'll also be able to find them posted on the Agile website, which is agile-ed.com. Now let's get started. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Allison Duquette. Allison is a veteran education technology executive with over 25 years of key management experience with marketing leading organizations such as Pearson, Archipelago Learning, and Blackboard, as well as several rapid growth startups, including Spectrum K-12 and Think Through Learning. We're really excited to have Allison with us today. She has a lot of hands-on experience choosing and using marketing automation technologies. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the program over to her so she can start sharing all of that information with you.
Okay, well, thanks, Suzanne, and thank you to everybody that's on the phone today. Certainly appreciate the interest in the discussion that we're having with the group here and with the team from Agile. And so I wanted to share with you a little bit today about some of the ideas that I've had experience with using marketing automation. And so you should be seeing now a slide that shows some of the choices that we have for marketing automation. There are almost an infinite list, I think, out there of marketing automation tools. Some of the ones on the screen here are ones that I personally had experience in using, and they vary in the complexity and the feature set of them and the degree of integration with other applications you might use and the pricing on these systems and how the systems are priced specifically, whether it's on contact or email. And so you may be using something that's on this screen here or something else, but there's certainly a wealth of these in the market that can be a great tool for not only your marketing team, but other functional areas within your organization. Oftentimes, and it's certainly been the case with organizations that I've been with, the marketing automation technology is a very significant piece of the marketing budget. My last company, I'm currently actually with Blackboard, but my last company, Think Through Learning, my marketing automation technology was the single largest piece of my marketing budget after events. And so since it was a very significant spend, I wanted to make sure that we were using it as efficiently as possible and we were getting a value in as many ways as we possibly could throughout the organization, because that helps justify the investment in your automation technology if you can show that you're getting an ROI beyond just marketing. So let's talk a little bit about what marketing automation can bring to you. And probably most of you have some automation technology, or you might be on this webinar because you're interested in marketing automation and wanting to know exactly what the benefits will be to your organization. So marketing automation enables you to do a lot of things that, from a marketing perspective, are essential to you being efficient. One of them is consolidated list management for both contacts, and I'm going to use contacts as a sales prospect or a business development contact, contacts and customers. At Think Through Learning, for instance, we use the same automation platform for the contacts throughout all of the customer life cycle, so that I could do the same maintenance and hygiene on my customer list as I did on my marketing list. Marketing automation enables you to do some very, very personalized targeted messaging, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it can lift a lot of manual overhead from your marketing team and get a much tighter message alignment to the role of the contact through the capabilities that are built into your automation system. A lot of the marketing automation systems have nice integration with social media activity or with what's going on your website so that you can see if you've got activities in marketing that are dropping people onto your website and what those are doing, and those activities can help with lead scoring, and so that can be a big help to determine if you actually are making an impact with your campaign. Bidirectional interface with your CRM. So for instance, Salesforce is a CRM that's used widely. It's one that I've used throughout my career. Lots of times, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, lots of times we see the automation system set up to send information to Salesforce or to your CRM, but you can also bring it back from your CRM, and that can be used to trigger a lot of good communication activity all along the customer life cycle, and we're going to cover that here in the next couple of slides. You also get very sophisticated workflow capabilities. So based on the attributes of the contact or the sales stage that they're at, or activities that contact has already completed, or time they spent on your website, or almost an infinite list of trigger points, you can do some workflows that will either send communications or move that contact around, or again, the list is almost infinite, but it takes a lot of the manual effort that some of my marketing teams have had to do in the past, and it lifts it to being almost immediate and much more accurate. And then certainly the benefit of automating a lot of the time-consuming and repetitive tasks and setting them up once and maintaining them on a periodic basis as opposed to having to do the same things over and over can enable you to do a lot more relevant and timely and targeted communication throughout the entire customer life cycle, as opposed to just doing the work with your actual marketing team. And so with a smaller marketing team, you can look like you're a much bigger marketing organization by setting up a lot of things one time and then just managing the efficacy of those. And it gives you empirical data on the results of your marketing investments. And so if you're a marketer, one of the things we're often challenged on is what are you actually delivering in terms of the investment that you're getting, in what are you getting back in terms of leads or visits to your website or social media hits or anything. And so being able to capture that information and look at what's working and what's not working and continually kind of revise and refine your marketing strategy and communication strategy certainly is a lot easier when you're getting very crisp, timely data. If you are going to use, so these are some learnings that I've had specifically. I love the concept of using the automation system across the entire organization, and I think it helps us as marketers in a number of ways. However, if you're going to use it beyond marketing and even using it inside of marketing in the most effective way, there's a lot of things you need to take into account as you're setting up your system and then continuing to plan and revise how you're using it. I think we can all speak to the fact that the quality of the data is essential, that the quality of your list, both your contact list and your customer list, has to be excellent for you to get the best bang for your buck out of your automation system. The quality of, and I'm going to talk a lot today about using your automation system with triggers from the CRM. And so if you don't have timely updates to your CRM, that can present a problem because then you're not going to be able to trigger things as efficiently. And so you're going to have to get buy-in from your sales leader to make sure that the sales team understands the better the data in the CRM, the more effective we can be in marketing and communicating with those folks. And then if you're using product usage data, for instance, to do campaigns to get folks to use your product more broadly, again, you got to make sure that that data is very, very clean. If you use your automation system across your entire enterprise, that's going to affect the type of information you collect for each contact. And so every time you think about a new area that you can use your automation system in, you're going to have to look back at that contact record and say, what do we need to capture about them? And I'll give you a little example here. If you're going to use it to communicate with customers, then you're going to have a strategy to grab the information when somebody becomes a customer, and as they stay a customer, and then if they stop being a customer, you've got to make sure that you then update the information so that we know who is a prospective customer, current customer, client, and a former customer, because we want to make sure that we're sending them communications that are aligned to where they actually are in their relationship with us as the organization. And then the CRM integration, having tight integration there, and very planful integration with your CRM so that you know when information goes back and forth, and any other internal systems that you might be integrating with if you're pulling information back from a system because you want to send budget updates or something. So making sure that you have, again, an actual well-defined integration strategy and somebody that owns that. And I implemented, when I was with Archipelago Learning, whose flagship product at that point in time was Study Island, we implemented Silverpop. And the definition of where the information was coming from to the marketing automation system, where it was going to come in if there was an update to that from another system. Just sitting down and working through that workflow was a very, very complicated discussion that involved people from many functional areas. And so I think my learning from that experience was that the more broadly you use your marketing automation system, the more important it is that you have actually documented what the data integration strategy is and who's responsible for making sure that all those connections are done right and stay right. And then this is something that you'll want to take into account too. The automation systems are priced very differently based on how you use them. I've had automation systems that were priced based on the number of messages that I deployed. I've had automation systems that were based on, or pricing based on, the number of contacts that were in the system. And so as you look at all of the areas that you may be able to leverage your automation technology, you also want to think about how's that going to affect the price of your automation technology, because there is nothing more dismaying than realizing that you're going to have a great big uptick in your annual costs for using your system that you didn't plan for in your budget. And so as you look at your automation technology and think about where you want to use it, you definitely want to make sure that you're taking kind of a cost-benefit approach there so that you are getting the ROI that you want for any additional costs. So let's talk a little bit about how you can look for opportunities to use your marketing automation and how you can engage the other departments in the organization beyond marketing in using your technology. So one of the ways that you can do this is you can look at the actual customer life cycle from, we'll call it initial business development, where you're trying to create awareness, all the way through the customer life cycle and what I'll call renewal or advocacy. And so I found this great graphic that also matched the Agile color scheme of the customer life cycle, and I've structured the next few slides to match up with the stage of the customer life cycle and how your automation system may help you support that particular stage of the life cycle. So the first area that we are typically engaged in as marketers is awareness and knowledge. So how do I make people aware of my solution, and then how do I educate them on the benefits of that solution, specifically for their needs? And so lots of us do outbound marketing campaigns. And I've been in multiple organizations where I've taken over what we call batch and blast campaigns, where there's monthly or some periodic outbound communication that kind of goes out once, and then we wait a while, and then we send out another outbound communication, and that involves a lot of overhead from the marketing department to to set those up, and sometimes they're done as numerous different campaigns to kind of personalize those based on the attribute of the particular contact. Are we talking to a principal? Are we talking to a teacher? Am I talking to an administrator, a CIO, whomever? And so one of the first areas that we can often get some incremental value from our marketing automation system is setting up drip campaigns, and drip campaign being a campaign, as I'm sure you all know, that uses multiple touch points, multiple triggers based on time or action or something to continue to send communications out. So setting up a drip campaign that uses some workflows and the dynamic content capabilities in most marketing systems to personalize inside of a single campaign the content for a specific state, a role, a reference account, or other elements of that content to make sure that the message that's going outbound in the campaign is relevant to the recipient. And let me give you an example here that we did at Think Through Math. We would send outbound campaigns that would go out to much of our list, but the information in that campaign would be swapped out based on whether or not it was an administrator or a classroom educator, the state they were in, and their specific test and the reference account. So they would get a campaign that the subject line would vary based on their state, and it would say, see what Pinellas County is doing if we were in Florida, but if that same exact message was going to Georgia, it would say, see what Cobb County is doing. And so you don't have to use multiple campaigns to do that. And then the body of the message would also change the content to say, in Cobb County, Georgia, we're having tremendous success with the students' math scores going up by X%. And we also have been working with Forsyth County, and so we were able to consolidate what had previously been numerous different campaigns that were individually done into a single campaign. And our automation system let us do that in one fell swoop, so that lifted a lot of overhead off the marketing team. Another area then that we put into place was to start changing from everything being outbound, where you're trying to figure out what people are interested in, to trying to get leads to come inbound. And for both our outbound marketing and our inbound marketing, we moved to content. What we call playbooks was a big part of our content strategy, that were short little booklets on things that were of interest, topics that were of interest to our audience, and that had specific actionable things that they could use right away. And so I've got a couple here that are available on the Think Through Math website that are good examples, but it was a way to, one, offer the audience something that would be useful to them, and then also gauge their interest in a particular topic, and then start sending them multiple messages through the drip campaign based on the particular topic they're interested in. And so this was a way for us to move folks through the marketing funnel based on them being interested in a particular topic, and then we'd continue to try and engage with them. So we'd start with a broad topic, creating a growth mindset, or what does an effective math classroom look like? And then if they were interested in that topic because they downloaded that playbook, then the next message would be a little bit, more refined, and could direct them to our website, could show them a video, might have some best practices that we could share with them, and we stepped them through often 4 or 5 messages before we handed them off to the sales team as a lead. And so by the time we hand them off as a lead, we have a much better sense of whether this person is actually interested in engaging with the organization, and specifically kind of what their hot button is. And so the quality of the leads went up dramatically with actually much, much less overhead on the marketing team. And so I think that's probably the biggest win right out of the gate if you're not already using drip campaigns to engage with folks, to work them through the marketing funnel. It's something that that is more overhead to set it up, but once you get it set up, you can oftentimes just kind of let it roll from there. And we were using for the inbound campaigning, we were using industry websites to promote our content and some pay-per-click, and actually the approach was definitely increasing the quality of the leads that we were handing off and the conversion rate on those at a very modest cost, far less than we had been paying previously. So that's to start creating the awareness of your solution. As you get somebody then from a lead into an actual opportunity, this is where you can start using the sales stage of your CRM to help move that opportunity through the sales stages and ultimately to a closed account. So this is why integration with your CRM is so important, and the quality of the data in your CRM is so important, because to help move the prospect along through your sales stage and support the efforts of your sales rep that's contacting them, you can trigger certain types of drip campaigns off that sales stage. And an example of that is after somebody has gotten into your sales pipeline and they're now considering your solution and you're trying to move them through selection, you can move them from the drip campaign to build awareness, kind of the biz dev lead gen drip campaign, into a new drip campaign that starts to send them information automatically about other clients that are using your solution, about client success stories where clients have had strong results using your solution. You can start to send them out some benefit highlights, feature benefit highlights, and one option here is to structure some of that in terms of kind of a checklist. So if you know they're going to go to RFP, that they've got, you know, kind of a draft bid spec there that you've provided to them as part of this drip campaign. And again, we're sending out these messages in this campaign based on the actions that this particular audience member is doing with each one of these messages. So we want to make sure that we're sending them relevant information throughout this particular stage of our relationship with this prospect. We also can send them out, since they're going to be potentially looking at other competitors in the market. We might use a part of this drip campaign that we've triggered to send out a little highlight of our competitive differentiators versus some of the other folks they might be looking at. So we can help our salesperson there with identifying the things that set our solution apart, and then maybe finish up with some independent reviews of your product. And so again, you know, our sales team is always interested in how marketing can actually, you know, move the needle for them. And so your automation system can supplement the effort of your sales rep so that this doesn't, because a lot of times these things fall to the sales rep to send out, and by using a drip campaign that's based on the sales cycle, you can make sure that we're sending them information that's useful to them for that particular part of the sales cycle without using a lot of individual sales rep bandwidth. And then ultimately, we may want to re-engage if you're not hearing back from somebody that was an opportunity. You can look for accounts that have gone dormant, and you can try and send them maybe a different kind of content or something new and exciting about your system to try and rekindle the relationship with the sales rep. And again, our goal here is to, without needing to add a lot of incremental staff, to take some of the day-to-day work off the sales rep so they can stay focused on the things that require human intervention. So then moving along through the customer life cycle, hopefully we get the prospect to a purchase point. And I've bought things in the past where the welcome from the company is really nicely done, and where I immediately get a great personal welcome from the company that makes me feel like they really valued my business. And it's an opportunity too to, to continue to build on what your brand message and your brand personality is about. And so relying on the information in your CRM is typically the best way to trigger something like this, but it could also be a trigger from an order entry system or a list that you get from your order entry or your finance department. You can use an automated workflow to update the prospect information in your marketing database to a customer. So now we know we don't want to send them information about why they should select us. We want to send information that validates why they did select us and helps them get off to a really smooth start with the company. And so this is a great time to send them key company contacts that they may be working with, to send them information about how they get customer support, to ask them to opt in for the kind of communications that we would like to send them and we hope that they read. And so this is a great way on an annual basis to send somebody a budget reminder. So for instance, many of my companies, we've had an annual subscription. And the worst thing that can happen is somehow the person that is making the budget and the person that is the consumer of your solution are not talking to each other. And your invoice shows up and it's not in their budget. And so by using your automation system and your customer database, you can send them out a reminder well in advance so that they can make sure that your product is in their budget. And we talked about early on the opportunity to track customers that leave the product. If you are maintaining that information well, this is an opportunity for you to use your automation system after a certain time frame to trigger a new campaign for them to come back. So to share maybe information about changes to the product or special pricing promotions or new reviews of the product that will encourage them to consider re-adopting your product. And again, the idea here is to be able to set a lot of these campaigns up one time and manage them as opposed to have to do all of these things using people throughout various areas of the organization. And the benefit too, an ancillary benefit, is that you make sure that you've got a consistent brand look when you do this in an automated way, that the messaging is consistent, that you know exactly what they got, that your sales team and your internal support team know exactly what people are getting, and there's not confusion with whether or not somebody got something, whether or not it was accurate and timely, et cetera. So it's a nice way to provide some standardization. And then I think one of the biggest bangs for the buck with automation technology is onboarding, where we want to make sure that once we've got a customer, that they have a superior experience with us in helping them access the resources that they need to use our solution in the best way. That we, lots of times, even experienced users, when you ask them what you can do better to help them use your product, they'll keep talking about professional development, more professional development, information on what's new in the product. Give them a quick start checklist so they can hit the ground running. Give them a tip of the week that's easy to consume. Did you know? And again, this is an area where making sure that you have the right role for somebody is important to make sure that content is very relevant. So what I tell an end user teacher that's using my product in his or her classroom with their students versus what I might tell an administrator that's going to use reporting or dashboards that are related to what's going on in the classroom is going to be very different. And so planning how you're going to get that role captured, how you're going to keep that information current so that the communications you're sending to people are very valuable. I mean, that's part of that whole data collection and maintenance strategy that you're going to think out early on as you start to do this. So I think that where we've been able to really lift in the past some manual overhead off of some of our staff members, has been taking over with automated campaigns a lot of the individual communications that may be going out to people from a support department, from a professional development department, where again, you want to make sure that you've got consistency with the message. You want to make sure that they're getting the most current version of everything, that your brand identity is being represented correctly. And so at Think Through Math, when I first started there, our professional development team would send quite literally millions of messages through Outlook every year to customers, and one that's, of course, enormous risk on the organization because that's how you can quickly end up on a blacklist. And two, the messages varied dramatically from person to person in their professionalism and their accuracy and the actual current level of that information. And we often had no idea whether or not that person was even the right person anymore. So when I took that over and got lists initially, we had enormous undeliverable rates because a lot of the contacts that they'd continued to send to hadn't been using our product in quite some time. And so again, by using your automation system for consolidated list management for not only your pre-sale contacts, but also once somebody becomes a customer, either a current customer or a former customer, you can make sure that we're sending the information that they need to use your system as thoroughly as possible to the actual people that are using it, as opposed to ending up sending information to folks that are no longer involved in your solution or your service. Another way that you can send out new feature highlights, most of us that are in the technology business continue to add new features to our solutions on a routine basis, and we want to make sure that people know how to use those and take advantage of those. And so it's a great vehicle for doing that. And then I've often spent time talking to our support department and our training departments about what do people tend to call into the support line or reach out to their professional services person about, and how can we head off a lot of those calls or emails by sending information out proactively. So if you have a solution that has an element to it that's only used on a very periodic basis, and so here's some examples: graduating students or administering an assessment a couple of times a year, running a W-2 kind of form where people only have to do that once a year and they forget from year to year how to do that. Setting up a campaign well in advance that triggers based on a date can really diminish the number of the congestion that's coming into your support or your services department, and make sure that people have that information in advance of when they need to use it. And so that can be a big assist in terms of just managing the workflow throughout the year going into your team that works with your clients. And then sort of the end of the customer life cycle here is advocacy. So how do we look at our automation system for getting our customers to start promoting our product and extending the reach of our sales team? And so I've done in many different organizations an annual customer satisfaction survey. Again, very important to know who's a customer, a current customer, a prospective or versus a former customer, because you might send them two very different types of communications. But doing a customer satisfaction survey and then sharing the results with your client, if that's something that they're interested in, if you're talking to folks about the most useful part of your solution, or if you're asking them what things are top of mind or where their pain points are or best practices or something, then that information can be very, very relevant to your clients. And this is an outstanding way to create new content pieces that you're going to use back at the start of your customer life cycle in the awareness and the knowledge and the evaluation. time frames. And so every year as I've done this customer satisfaction survey, and I ask people the things that are important to them, or what initiatives are they working on, or where do they see the market going in certain areas. That's a great source of information for me to say, well, if people are struggling with how to purchase, what should they be looking for when they're purchasing a math intervention system, then that is a tip-off for me that if I have a content piece or a playbook on things that they should consider as they look at intervention solutions, then there's a playbook that I can use for again, my awareness building and getting people to get into my sales pipeline. And so that is that respondent group from your customer sat survey then becomes a great pool of people for you to continue to reach out to, again, with drip campaigns, to ask them to speak on your behalf on all of the various forums that are out there now, through social media, through industry awards, folks that might be interested in doing a success story for you or hosting a webinar. And so at Think Through Math, for instance, we sent out our customer satisfaction survey to about 50,000 teachers at the end of the school year. And I routinely would get maybe 5,000 responses very, very quickly on that. And then I would, in my automation system, flag those folks as having responded to my survey. And then I could trigger campaigns that said, please review us on Graphite. Or you've had success with Think Through Math. Please, would you be interested in doing a success story? Since I already know they're willing to spend the time responding to my customer sat survey, it's a great way for me to know who my natural advocates are going to be. Again, without incurring a lot of overhead on your marketing team or your services team. And this is the overarching theme of this discussion is how do I lift off a lot of things that we oftentimes do manually by using workflows and drip campaigns and fields that we collect in our automation system to make sure that we're communicating with people in a very relevant way. And if you have customers that are not communicating with you, where you have them in your contact database, but they're not responding to your survey, they may not be opening your professional development emails or your tip of the week emails, you can often use a lack of activity on that contact to automatically trigger kind of a re-engagement campaign. And a great re-engagement campaign that isn't a lot of overhead on a client, not nearly the overhead that a customer sat survey is just a simple one-question campaign where you send out a campaign to these folks that haven't engaged with you in any way for a certain time frame, for instance, and ask them what is the thing that is the single most important thing in moving the needle for a student, or what is the single thing that is the most non-value added time consumed for them, or what is the one thing that they wish they knew before they selected their current system of some type. And so that's a great way to determine if those people are still valid contacts for you and potentially get them back into wanting to consume the various types of content and information that you're sending them. And since I have generally not had large marketing teams, I've been very, very reliant on the automation system and the workflows and the drip campaigns that we could set up to have much more marketing and communication activity throughout the entire customer life cycle than I ever would have been able to do had I been doing a lot of this stuff manually. And it also, as we have mentioned, helps you be consistent in the messages, helps you be more relevant in the messages, lifts off things from other areas of the organization where those folks can do more value-added work with their limited staff. And so your automation system can be such a valuable investment for you if you look to use it more broadly throughout your entire operation. And so your automation system can deliver a substantial ROI to you if you are clever and creative as to how you're going to use it. I generally try and do a demo of my automation system for other departments and brainstorm with them as to how our automation system can lift work off them. You know, we're there to help, and so once they see that power of what you can do with automated communication, they'll oftentimes bring you lots of ideas that you can execute on that will help them be more valuable in their relationships with customers and prospects. Ask your clients what kind of communication they want, and then talk to your service and support team so that you are giving your customers and prospects information that is useful to them, that's actionable to them, and that is hopefully lifting off some of the workload from some of the other areas that can oftentimes become quite congested, particularly at certain key points of the year. You know, the end of the year as you have to graduate students, or over the Christmas holidays as you're doing certain things, or you know, during the summer when people are doing certain things. And so that can be a huge win for your service teams. And again, the integrity of your data is critical to using your technology. My own experience, and I've created some of this on myself, it's been painful learnings. You know, we always say garbage in, garbage out. And what I've learned with my automation systems is garbage in and oftentimes chaos out when you start sending communications that aren't the right communication, or not at the right time, or they're duplicate, or you're not differentiating between whether somebody is still a sales prospect versus a current customer versus a former customer. You know, I think we all have relationships with companies. I have had an American Express for 35 years. I still get marketing information from them where you would think they have never heard of me before, and they have to sell me on American Express. And so the better the data is on where that contact is in their relationship with you, the better the communication, and the easier it is for that client to do business with you. And I think the more they will believe that you actually value their business and know what it is that they need from you. So I think we're sort of end of time here for my talking. So are there any questions that people have in terms of using automation systems or anything that we've talked about so far? I've lined up my content with the customer lifecycle, but it's not necessarily the way that you would have to do that. To me, it makes sense, but you know, you could just as easily line it up by functional area, or you could do an analysis that says, where do we have bottlenecks in our workflow during the year, and how do we resolve those? Or, you know, there's so many ways to say, where is there an opportunity for a great win using our automation technology in a clever way that is not necessarily based on the stage of the life cycle.
Well, thanks, Allison. You definitely covered a lot of information. And we do have some questions that have come in, so we will get started with those. Just to give you a chance to get a drink of water before we dive in, I will just remind everybody that we will be sending out an email probably tomorrow morning with a link to Allison's PowerPoint slides, as well as a recording of the presentation, so you can review it, or feel free to share it with others on your team that weren't able to join. Okay, so we will just go ahead and dive into the questions. So our first one is, this company has used marketing automation to nurture opportunities for some time. And the problem that they have encountered is that once something becomes an opportunity, there's always those unique cases where the automated email content doesn't really fit with the situation. And this person's looking for some advice from you on how you might have navigated that in the past.
So, and I may need some clarification on that. I think that using the stage of the sale in the CRM can help you line up the content once you get that opportunity into, once it goes from a lead to an actual opportunity. And so you can continue to alter the type of content that you're sending out to that particular contact based on where they are in their, moving through the various sales cycles that you use. And as part of that, factoring in the role is important. So I want to make sure that even if I'm using the sales cycle inside of the CRM to send out the content, that the content that I'm sending out is that person is going into a drip campaign that says, this is an administrator, this is a senior administrator, this is an actual end user that's going to be hands-on in the product, to make sure that you're not sending them information that is not meaningful to them or that's too broad in scope, and so they're not interested in wading through that because they don't see how it's going to be relevant. So stage of the sale is a great way to do that. Am I answering the question? So stage of the sale and role specifically has been how I've handled that in the past.
So the person just wrote in that the sales cycle doesn't cover the nuances of an opportunity.
Okay. So there may be, so I think I know where they're heading with that. So maybe it's somebody that's going to use, and I'll try and clarify, maybe they're going to use the solution in one area. So they're going to use this with Title I kids. They're going to use it with special ed kids. So they're going to use it with gifted and talented kids. So that could be another area where exactly the use case for that opportunity is going to vary from opportunity to opportunity. And in that case, that gets back to, if you want to vary the content using automation, you're going to have to capture that particular element of data in the contact role as part of your collection of data while you're moving them from a lead to an opportunity, so that you can ultimately kind of tune the specific information to the use case that they have. So is that more along the lines of the nuance in the opportunity?
Yes, that's what he said, yes. So, and it also sounds like from some other comments he sent in that they're using MailChimp, which from my own experience, while it does some fantastic things and is a great way to get started with marketing automation, does have some limitations. It's certainly not, as robust as a HubSpot or Pardot or something like that, where you can get really granular with those nuances. So
exactly, and it's really, really important. And so on that same topic, and then we'll move on to the next question. One of the things that's challenging for a sales leader, and having been one, is to get the sales team to keep the information in your CRM current. They always feel like you're asking them to do busy work. But if you can explain to them, here's how I can help you, if you'll give me this information. So when you're talking to this particular prospect, if you know they're specifically going to use this in a Title I deployment, then if you'll put that into this field, then I can make sure that I'm sending them information that's around Title I, not around gifted and talented or something else. And so I think that if you show your sales team that there's actually a value add for them, it's more likely that they'll cooperate with you there.
And that actually is a really nice segue into our next question, which was a little bit related to the first one. So how do you balance, direct communications from reps who may be working an opportunity with what's coming from the automation? Or do you tend to say just keep those two things separate? The reps don't call until you toss it over the fence to them.
So once something has become an opportunity, I'm expecting that the rep is also having a dialogue there. So I always make sure that the reps are seeing all the communications that are going out so that they're not caught off guard when a communication goes out. And then the prospect asks them or contacts them. We want to make sure that they know in advance the kind of things that go out. So the reps always get the full set of communications from the drip campaigns so that they know how those work and when those work. But the goal of the communications that I've sent out through the automation system is really to be a complement to what the rep is doing. So these are things a lot of times that the reps would be sending to somebody. So rather than send the reps, here's a new playbook that we have, here's a new customer case study, rather than send that directly to the rep and say, you send that out to all of your customers, or your prospects rather, I can do it on my side so that then after that goes out, the rep can call or email them and say, I just wanted to follow up to make sure you saw the customer case study or you saw the press release or review or award or whatever it is. And so it's not intended to supplant the rep. It's intended to help them have more reasons to reach out to that particular prospect and continue to keep that relationship moving along and keep that opportunity moving through the sales cycle.
Yeah, and I think this is a strong instance of really needing to have that communication and collaboration with the sales team so that you're telling them what you're sending and why you're sending it and how that works with what their efforts are as well, so that it feels collaborative
and there are sometimes,
instead of combative.
Exactly. Sometimes they don't want me to communicate. And so there are times that a rep asks me to opt a prospect out for some reason. And so, again, it's really important that there's, good bidirectional teamwork between marketing and sales so that we're communicating in a relevant manner that complements the rep, but we're not communicating when maybe we shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so our next question is, from your experience, how long does it take to get set up with a marketing automation system, particularly if it's one of the more robust tools like a HubSpot or a Pardot?
It is not a trivial job, I will tell you that. So I moved from HubSpot to Pardot about a year ago, I think through math, and it was a very significant effort. I thought there would be, that I'd get a little bit of a tailwind because I was already a pretty expert marketing automation user, but there were a lot of things that we had to rethink about how we did, and there were things that there wasn't really a comparable function in Pardot or one function in HubSpot with 3 functions in Pardot. So we actually had a project plan that we checked in on weekly. It's just like any other technology. Start with kind of what your objective is, break it into the individual tasks that you need to do. I would recommend that you want to start with a pretty straightforward implementation to get through the learning curve. So as we went to Pardot, my starting point, I continued to run HubSpot for a lot of the campaigns, and my starting point for us to understand how Pardot worked and all of the various functionalities that we were going to need to deal with was I changed all my autoresponders over to Pardot first, and then we started our newsletter going out through Pardot, and so we phased it in because there were learnings throughout that. And after we were pretty comfortable that we understood how the Pardot Salesforce integration and things worked, then we started with the monthly outbound campaigns were going out, and then ultimately we set the drip campaigns. So I had the advantage of being able to run my 2 systems concurrently, but depending on the system, the more robust the functionality is, the bigger the lift it's going to be. And so phasing it in and chunking it up into kind of bite-sized pieces where you decrease the risk in any one of the parts that you start to implement is the way that I have found it easiest to manage with a fairly small marketing team.
That's helpful. Similarly, do you think it's best to go big or go home with marketing automation, so diving right in with a HubSpot or Pardot or Marketo, or start small with something like a MailChimp?
I think it really depends on where you see yourself ultimately going with your automation system. And so if you see yourself wanting to use your automation system for communicating with customers once they're on board, and you want to use it to send out information about, like we said, drip campaigns for onboarding and things like that, then I would look to get a system that has those capabilities, because my experience in moving from HubSpot to Pardot is that even if you're a very expert user in one system, it's a pretty big can be a pretty big lift to get to your new system. You're migrating all your contacts over. You're giving up some of the historical information that you had. You're resetting up a lot of workflows and things, and so I wouldn't want to do that on a routine basis. And so therefore, if I knew I had some specific objectives from my marketing automation system, I would want to buy the system that I thought supported those most effectively, and then I would implement it in a phased manner so that I wasn't trying to boil the ocean, but that I knew that I had those capabilities out there. Like when we invested in Pardot at Think Through Math, my fundamental reason that I wanted to switch to Pardot, I really had two. I wanted very tight integration with Salesforce, and there was a product that was available that was a complement to Pardot called Engage, and that would let the reps do their own micro campaigns, but using my database and with all the controls and templates and things that made sure that they weren't kind of getting off the reservation. So I knew that I wanted to use Engage, but we had Pardot implemented for, I think, about 8 months before we ultimately then implemented Engage and turned that on. But I knew I was going to use it, and so we planned ahead for how that was going to work.
That makes sense. Yeah, look at that end goal and then take baby steps to get towards it.
Exactly.
So you, in talking kind of about nurturing, specifically the lead nurturing, so less of current customers, how many emails do you recommend sending after they've had some sort of first content? So they've, downloaded that content. How often do you keep emailing them, and when do you stop?
So what we did, and this really varies by the type of solution that you have and the contacts that you're communicating with, most of our drip campaigns that I'd set up at Think Through Math were probably about maybe a 6-week campaign to get somebody to go from initial awareness and initial engagement to trying to hand them off to Salesforce as a marketing qualified lead. And so they would download a playbook, and then we would wait about a week, and we'd send them a follow-up message that said, thanks for downloading our playbook on building a growth mindset. Did you know that, here's 3 other things about growth mindset, and click here to see something on our blog. And so our cadence was about a message every week to 10 days. Ultimately, when they open the final message, they would hand off to a lead. So we were trying, our sales cycle for that product wasn't particularly long, and so we wanted to get them from an initial contact to a lead in a pretty short time frame. But if I had a much longer sales cycle, a much more complicated product, communicating with a different type of contact, I might slow that down a little bit.
Okay, and we are starting to get close on time. We've had a couple of people who are really just wanting some more information. One person's asked, do you have some recommendations for conferences around marketing automation that you would recommend attending?
So if you want to get some great information on automation in general, I would recommend that you get on HubSpot's marketing list. For one thing, their content is exceptional. I don't open a lot of marketing communications. I'm sure a lot of us don't. But the HubSpot stuff that you got, even if you're not using HubSpot or don't plan to use HubSpot, HubSpot sends you out some great content. And they also have great examples of, how to really effectively use automation. Most of the automation providers, so the larger ones like a HubSpot or a Pardot or something, have annual conferences. And I have definitely sent people to the Eloquent annual conference. We belong to the HubSpot user group when I would sit with Think Through Math. And so I think belonging to the local user group and tapping into, the expert users that have had the product maybe longer than you and brainstorming and having somebody that you can reach out to and get their experience is definitely a way to optimize your use. And then going to the automation conference for that particular product, because how you use that product is going to vary based on the specific product you've selected. And then there's a lot of information that comes out of the AMA on automation, and I actually signed up to be on the list for a number of other automation products as well, just to get interesting white papers or best practices. But I think the most valuable conferences that we went to were the ones that were actually hosted by our automation provider.
Yeah, and I've certainly heard wonderful things about the HubSpot conference in particular, as well as some of the stuff Salesforce offers around Pardot and Engage. So we have reached the end of our time, I'm sad to say, but thank you again, Allison, for all of that information and for responding to all those questions. And thanks to everyone in the audience who joined us today. Just one final reminder that we will send out the link to the recording and the PowerPoint slides, and again, feel free to share those or review them again yourself. And I just want to let you know that our first webinar of 2017 is going to be around using video as a sales and marketing tool. The folks at Sable Vision will be joining us, so keep an eye on the Agile website and in your inbox for registration details for that first event of the year. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great afternoon.